"Talk to me," Cookie said in a low voice. A pirate craft tore out from the slag remains of the pirates' AWACS. The alarm in Cookie's cockpit threw targeting solutions on his screens, demanding the forcibly calm pilot to pull the trigger after weapons lock. Moments later, a swarm of micromissiles devoured the craft, adding its husk to the ever-growing pile of carnage that was the battle space. "We're either fucked or legends," Milks replied, queuing up a set of net points for her pilot to move through, trying to get him as close as possible to the centre of this mess, without anyone being able to cut them off. "Odds are still 16-1, and I'm seeing scattered crews beginning to meet up. If we don't do something fast, we'll be dogfighting flights instead of scattered forces stuck on their own." "Which would be ill-conductive to our continued survival." "I see you picked up something for the RN aviators we met up back on Earth," Milk replied. "Follow the nav points. We'll get in the middle and start stacking bodies. Hopefully that'll keep them on their heels." Cookie shifted his grasp on the controls set up before him, and breathed out. "Oh Lord," he thought. "Keep my aim true and gaze clear and deliver me from danger." A prayer he had said before. Here's hoping someone was listening this far out. In popular media, the phrase turn and burn had multiple meanings. Everything from making a decision and sticking with it, whether or not it's a smart one, to cutting and running from something, to even a combat definition. But in the end, the phrase had its origins in military aviation. Turn fighting was the concept of using an aircraft's maneuverability and powerful engines to engage the enemy in close-range dogfighting, traditionally with guns or with short-range missiles. Most commonly found in the Aces High series, or the Human Ace Combat video game series, this style of Reeks fighting is highly cinematic, highly fun, and highly irregular. Black box recording starts. "Contact! Faded. She's inside our cap. Move your tits, ladies, we're dealing with a flight of aces. Keep those sensors overlapping and watch each other's backs. She's on me. Oh god, I'm being engaged. Shots in my wing. Ugh! Centrers. No! I'll kill you for that, you bitch! Free, stay in formation. Break it and you're dead. Fuck that! They kill centrers. I'm going after... Missile lock! Fuck! Freeze down. Who's still up? Come on, ladies. I can't be the last one on this net. Oh, you daughters of Stis, someone report! Report? Oh, goddess, I'm alone. I sir... Black box recording ends. Most air-to-air duels in the modern battle space either involve semi-BVR ranges that are found in the void of space where computer-guided missiles, AWACS-assisted laser fire, and glide-craft homing torpedoes are the standard weapons of war. In atmosphere, the nearly outdated but still common full BVR warfare is critical, and fought with radar cross-sections, precision munitions, and orbital lockdown assistance. Of course, the above fully assumes the craft involved begin their engagements at a standoff range, with full support, advantage, and/or are aware of the other's presence. Military engagements tend not to allow such assumptions. 3 down, Milk reported. Good kills. They made it easy, Cookie replied, bringing the interceptor around into a shallow bank, cutting away from the growing debris field of destroyed aerospace assets. A dull thunk echoed through the interceptor, as the now empty missile pods were ejected from magnetic pylons. That's the last of our munitions, though. Down to what, our ASM and our gun? Milk asked, bringing up the diagnostic software. Unless we can suddenly get a resupply, pretty much. Hold on, the Kentucky pilot commented, pausing the bank to squeeze the trigger for his cannon. Scratch 1. Down to 12 enemies in the airspace then. Gunship's still safe. Your plan of being the scariest motherfucker in flight is keeping them focused on us. That plus sensor baffling makes them think we're an entire wing of interceptors. And the ECM is holding? With that AWACS we took off in the field, easily. Unless we take significant damage, ECM should hold, Milk replied, taking a quick look through all systems. Statics rising to 23% capacity. Heat sinks are holding. Engines at 80% capacity. We're in the green. Warn me when we get to 45 and 75, Cookie asked. Milk nodded in her seat, adding custom alerts to the bars. Done. Approaching the last nav point. Prepare for a dogfight. You'll be diving into another pack. Cookie's fingers squeezed the control stick and throttle before relaxing. He took a deep breath and let it out. Let's do this. Head into the merge, going in for guns. A common tactic by pirates, rebels, and other assorted scum and traitors to the Imperium was to lie in wait around phase points or refueling stations to pounce upon Imperial naval ships when they are at their most vulnerable. Strategies including bubble riding allowed our clever navy to defeat these tricks, but a bloody swath was cut across the expeditionary fleets during the early days of the punitive expedition against the Alliance. In these situations, the mobility and maneuverability of aerospace fightercraft, such as the Interceptor, matters nearly as much or even more than the weapons or missiles it mounts. After all, when engaging in this type of close-range Reeks flight, it is not the frame that wins, but the pilot inside it. Teleska threw her head back and forth as her pilot rolled the aerospace fighter into a dive. Shit! I thought I saw something before you rolled. Stop jerking us around! She yelled at her pilot. Melt, the pirate pilot, was too busy hearing the missile lock tone blaring in her ears to care about minor stiffing from her gunner. Will you shut up and just shoot something? We've been locked up and nothing I'm doing is shaking it. Well then, maybe you should fly better. And you know I can't just shoot randomly because then I might hit our allies. Then at least you'll be hitting— Fuck! As the pair screamed at each other, a blur of a shape passed them, the ripples from overlapping grav drives shaking the two craft, and causing Teleska to spin in her poorly maintained turret chair. Wait, is that you, Girl 6? A familiar voice called. It was Refresk, one of the newer members of their band. She had come in with an old consortium surplus chaser craft, all laser with barely a turning radius, but it carried a high-powered sensor array to guide all those lasers. Something quite useful, if the pair were ever going to find this enemy squadron. Yeah, it's us, Refesk. You mind forming up? We'll swing by the back of the ship and see if we can't hunt this bitch down, Mayet replied, coming down nearly instantly when the promise of backup appeared. What do you mean, this bitch? I thought there were at least a wing of them, Refesk called back. Sensors keep giving me faded contact, but they're moving far too fast for it to be a single ASF. I think it's the Azor Metriones, an unfamiliar voice cut in. Here she trained up a recruit and is getting them blooded. The woman had harshly accented trade shill, that still sounded overly formal. I think you're full of it, Teleska replied. The Marchiones? She's with us, she's with the Crowns. Wait, is that who we're working for? Refesk interjected. I thought we were independent. I'm just repeating the rumours I've heard. Look, where are you, new girl? We'll group up and hunt this bitch down, Teleska finished. There was a bit of humming. Well, first, I'm offended at being called a bitch. Second, Cookie squeezed the trigger for his nose-mounted laser cannon, sweeping it across the pair of fighters. He watched as the high-energy pulses ripped apart wings, cockpits, and poorly maintained reactors kicked over into a pair of shrapnel-filled steam explosions. Safety overrides disengaged to murderous results. And second, because I was just buying time for a target lock. Good shooting, Cookie, his backseater commented, bringing up the next set of waypoints. That's a few more down. Current numbers have us at 10 enemy fighters left, and they've clumped up. Well, this is about to get tricky, Cookie muttered, as he dragged the Interceptor into a sharp turn, setting it in motion for an oblique arc toward the growing furball. Say, Milk? Yeah? Think you could give them phantom targets? The Kentucky native, oh so very far from home, couldn't see it, but he could feel the cruel grin. "I think I can do you one better, oh pilot mine. Get us in close, and let's start raising hell." In an aircraft moving at high speeds, identifying anything becomes an issue. Commercial flights make use of onboard sensors, radar guidance, experienced crews, and constant communications with ground controllers to negate these issues. Without these aids, collisions, crashes, and aircraft going missing would become infinitely more common. When disrupted, these issues become a near certainty. If one were to scramble, hijack, or mislead using these systems, commercial flights could be destroyed, misrouted, or forced into collisions en masse. Now imagine that all those commercial planes are full of incredibly stressed out pilots carrying high-velocity missiles and rotary laser cannons. In the military, identifying your foe and identifying your friend is of critical importance to ensuring that you don't accidentally mark one as the other, which inevitably gets fellow pilots killed. That is why intelligence, sensor clarity, and having someone managing your equipment is so very much important, especially in environments where all you can do is see by equipment like BVR engagements. Or, in most cases, engagements in the vacuum between stars. "Sensor goes deployed. You ready for this?" Milk asked her pilot, as she reached forward again and began flicking their active sensors off. Radar off. LiDAR off. Infrared off. Cookie rolled his neck, loosening it up in preparation of the mess they were about to fly into. "No, but this is the only way we can even the odds. Shutting off main thruster and jettisoning E-core. All systems passive." "Confirmed. All systems passive," Milk replied, checking her own screens as the formerly uniform formation of 10 aerospace craft before the pair broke down as streaks of sensor ghosts, target locks, and missile alerts tore apart any cohesion into a mess of panic. "You know what this feels like?" she asked. "What?" "Like when we cross-trained with the wild weasels." Cookie snorted. "Yeah, you gotta be shitting me." "Unfortunately not. Well, let's get moving then." Heading to the merge. One of the few exceptions to this, of course, was in a point-blank gun duel where one could simply look out their cockpit glass and see the enemy aerospace fighter dashing by. The problem there is that the pilot and gunner would have to be incredibly skilled with dogfighting in order to remain close enough for visual targeting. They would have to manually control their weapons, and they would have to engage at near point-blank range. If the enemy had any kind of missile lock, the brave gunner would have been torn to pieces by high velocity, high explosive, proximity-fused warheads. And all that is assuming long range. Accurate laser fire didn't rip them apart first, guided by the same sensors that led the missiles to their killing grounds. Of course, that's assuming the enemy fighters could get a sensor lock. Cookie felt his heart hammer in his chest as his thumb traced over the stick between his legs in the cockpit. He reached a hand up to his throat, pulling the old wooden crucifix from his neck and wrapping it around his central control stick, muttering a prayer while he did. A glance at the wood floating in the zero gravity of an interceptor, with all but the most basic life support and passive systems turned off, provided him with a modicum of comfort as his interceptor dove towards a pack of enemy fighters, shooting at anything and everything that appeared on their sensors. The VT-713 interceptor was a tough old bird, but the high-powered lasers mounted on most craft could cause severe damage if they impacted. And after having to listen to Ventures 4 rant about damage during training, he was more than intimately aware of how easy it would be for a stray shot to clip something critical and turn their warplane into nothing but a floating tomb. To die so far from the light of their own sun, to die without even seeing their homeworld one last time since they left it. Ryan Kennedy found himself mouthing a prayer as the passive sensors began picking up weapons fire and tracing it in the cockpit, turning the open void into a crisscrossing stitch of deadly beams. He banked slightly, rolling to the side as a stitching of laser fire passed by from a bandit's blind fire at an unseen target. The only benefit of this much panic was that occasionally they'd tag each other and add to the panic. His thumb traced the Raincraft Imperial Shipyard's logo, embedded in the stick's flat side. The aerospace company, a Shorvanti Lockheed Martin equivalent, was the type of company that used its own symbol as texturing on the stick's grip. It was that little fact that let Cookie focus on something other than the upcoming dogfight. Something other than the corpses that would soon result from whatever happens. His heartbeat began to calm as he took deep breaths and traced the RIS symbol with his thumb. 3 kilometers, Milk whispered over comms. There was no chance of them being overheard. Closed-circuit communications and the void of space, but instincts died hard. They wanted to be quiet, to be unseen. To talk at normal volume felt like singing the Soviet anthem in a new submarine. Tempting fate. Check, Cookie whispered back. His finger rested over the trigger of his cannon as the reticle drifted, following his eyes. He could see the specks of energy flash and engine wash dance among the blackness of space, and pinprick of stars like lightning bugs flickering in the night sky back in Kentucky. His left hand rested on the throttle, the cold engine leaving no thrusting power for the pilot, forcing the drifting interceptor to rely on nothing but maneuvering thrusters and momentum. 2 kilometers, Milk whispered. Check, Cookie whispered back. In a flash of laser fire, one enemy craft was left drifting as their friend shot through a false target lock and sliced off his wing. 1 down, 9 to go. Runoff 3 was a slowly drifting sitting duck for whoever saw them. Interceptor ECM and stealth tech was good, but it wasn't that good. Running passive, it brought to mind a joke about radar picking up hypersonic bumblebees. However, when hit with a dedicated sensor ping, or if someone simply looked and saw how the stars would flicker in and out of existence, as the Raincraft Imperial Shipyard's aerospace craft passed over them, the jig would be up, and the slowly drifting interceptor would be nothing but target practice for whatever weapons these pilots had left. And yet, nobody looked. Nobody glanced their way as the pair drifted past the 1 kilometer mark, well into even a commercial astronav sensor bubble. And still, nobody searched outwards, too entrapped in the smoke and mirrors of ECM static and ghost targets, and the flickering shapes of their own allies causing them to panic. Any proper military would have drilled this exact scenario, and would have made it so its pilots would have known better than to fall into panic and tunnel vision. But when the first shots were fired, fear took over, and training went out the window. For these weren't proper military pilots. These were pirate scum. Talk to me, Cookie whispered to his backseater. We are inside the go area. You are clear to attack when ready, she whispered back. Are they still biting? Milk paused, readying her console. Some of the more experienced ones have realized we've been fucking with their systems. How much longer can we keep going? Waiting? No more than another few minutes. Cookie sighed. He glanced at his own sensor console. Enemy ships lighting up on the passive sensors every time they fired their weapons. Marking free. His right thumb rubbed up against the grip, emblazoned with the RI Shipyard's logo, before settling to rest on the head of the stick, ready to control the craft. Free, he whispered. His left hand rested over the throttle. An interceptor's fusion torch could go from dead cold to roaring power in 0.45 seconds. However, it threw off enough sensor flare that it would be picked up by everyone, and until the engine was hot and firing, they would be sitting near still. Nothing but a massive thermal target lock. The timing had to be perfect. Too early, and they got picked up by every sensor in the furball and lost initiative. Too late, and they were dashed through the furball and out the other side, drawing fire all the way while unable to maneuver. 2. The interceptor seemed to go still beneath his hand, waiting like a warhound on a leash, waiting for that order to go. Waiting for the call to wake the beast. 1. The targeting reticule synced up to his eyesight, and began to track and glance around. A faint mechanical whir from the gimbal turret's motor, telling Cookie the gun was following his sight. A flicker of movement. An enemy craft trying to break away for safety. His eyes fixed on it. "Mark," he replied, slamming the thruster to full and pulling the trigger on the laser cannon. High-powered penetrating beams of death sliced through the fleeing ASF, and, with a flick of his eyes, Cookie put a second burst through a limping and lamed craft that had been caught by friendly fire. Instantly, his board lit up with sensor locks as the roaring engine and weapons fire lit their interceptor up like a Christmas tree in the middle of a Verdun night. And yet, he grinned. For the moment, as he hit Mark, he could hear the telltale static of his backseater getting to work jamming communications with her favourite tactic. Heavy fucking metal. As the raucous sound of Iron Maiden filled every broadcast frequency Milk could slip her E-War fingers into, Cookie dove into the pack of enemy fighters with a vicious grin. After all, Aces High was the perfect choice for this dogfight.